Welcome back. We still trying to get used to our strange news set. But we've got what, another 7 days to go before we cast our votes with the new constitution. We're joined now by somebody who wears two hats. He's the executive director of IED, or Institute for Education and Democracy, and also wears another hat, the Election Observations Group. He's a ELOG steering committee member. Peter Allega, it's good to see you.
Thank you very much.
We saw something scary with Mutegi on the news. We were even discussing it during the papers, that even some of the technical people, the clerks, have no idea how to handle the elections. So give us a glimpse of whether we are prepared as a country, as far as these elections are concerned, and how do we sort out those small issues that could be detrimental on that day?
You know, as they always say, the devil is always in the details. You know, this is it. And as a country, really, we have to pay quite a lot of attention to some of these things. You know, we have 7 days or so. That time is too little.
Absolutely.
You know? And if you were to talk very candidly, you say there is no time left for anything. So some of these things are things which we ought to have sorted out already now, you know, so that when we proceed to the election, 7 days now, we have a commission that is moving like an oiled machine, technically, logistically, you know, administratively. That's the kind of thing that we want to see. And we also want to see Kenyans moving along with them. You know, it's a huge responsibility. It's not a simple thing, as we always say. Elections, when it is just about like this, it's like war, you know. And war, when you go there, you have to get your strategies right, your technique right, and most importantly, your arsenals, not the football team. Please don't confuse it.
So yesterday there was this mock elections.
Yes.
What were actually the problems that you witnessed?
You see, the idea of having a mock elections is to do a dry run, you know, so that you are able to do logical tests and just see where you are with things and put in place corrective measures. You know, it's not just the electoral management body who is doing this. As observers, we are also doing this, and we've begun today. Today we will be testing our systems for our parallel vote tabulation, which is an interesting thing, and we invite everybody to just see that. So all of us in this game always try to measure ourselves against time and against what lies ahead of us, to see our level of preparedness, which is a great thing, because then we can sit back, reflect, and evaluate, and then put in place corrective measures. But you see, the exercise, yesterday's exercise in the 1,450 polling stations across the country was quite important. For me, it was coming a bit late. We ought to have done it a little earlier, so that we have adequate time. We only have 7 days to correct some of these things. And you know, some of them are critical because they go to the level of awareness, the level of outreach, the level of voter education that we've had out there, and the quality of that. Because you see a sense in which quite a lot of people still don't understand the process and the procedure. And that is what is important. You recall in the last elections, the number of, in the last referendum, so to speak, and also in the last elections, you know, the number of spoiled votes were quite high. And that is quite alarming, you know.
And you're seeing it happening again on this one?
Yes, it is likely to happen in terms of technical mistakes that are likely to be committed and to be seen in the process.
Let's break it down into the voter and the clerk. Let's start with the clerk. What did you see in terms of the weaknesses pertaining to the technical people, the clerks, and how can that be resolved in the 7 days? Let's move on to the vote in terms of what can be done.
Let me say that overall, yes, there is a sense in which there is a fair understanding of the process and a fair managerial by the officials, you know, running down up from the clerks to the presiding officers in the stations that we were able to look at as observers. But what is important is that with a week remaining, we would not want to see technical hitches in the operations of our elections. More particularly, we would not want to see late opening of polling stations. You know, there were incidents, places where polling stations were opening at 8, But we also saw confusion in the process, in the manner in which this was being administered and managed. At this point in time, that is unacceptable completely. And, you know, there's still
what will cause the opening of the ballot, the polling station? Is it because of transport? Is it because...
These are logistical issues which ought to have been sorted out. But I think the good thing about this is that this was a dry test, so that you are able to then reflect as an institution, as the IEBC, to put in place corrective measures. You know, on 4th of March, there will be no time to reflect. This is it. Yeah, the thing begins, it begins and it must move on. And you know, the magnitude in terms of what you're dealing with is so huge that you cannot afford to waste time on logistical, technical mistakes. And that is what we are urging the IEBC moving forward, that they must now reflect very closely, work with stakeholders, all those involved, the security observers, the media, in these remaining 7 days, to just ensure that the technical issues pertaining to the operations of elections are correctly put in place and will run smoothly. That is what we are looking at as observers, and that I know is what you are looking for as the media, and that is what Kenyans expect. Absolutely.
Well, one of the, I think the biggest challenges about the ballot paper themselves, there will be booklet.
Yes.
Because of the numbers. And for people to open the booklet and look for the candidate they want, even illiterate people, even people who know how to read and write, it's like looking in a stuff.
I want to tell you a joke which I've had in my experience and interaction with elections, particularly this coming one, you know, with the example of what we've seen elsewhere in the DRC, you know, where you have 10 to 20 candidates, you know, and this is it, that probably our democracy should work in such a way that we limit the number of candidates. That is not democracy. But on a lighter note, yeah. But the point being made here is that this is going to take longer than we expect, because you have to flip through all this in order for people to get to the candidates. You know, that also means that the time taken to make the choice will be longer, because you have to scrutinize the ballot paper very carefully. And you know, a lot of people are still confusing names. I hear, for example, rumors that certain candidates haven't even disclosed to the voters the names that will appear on the ballot paper. So, and that perhaps will come as a shock as well to many. You know, people campaign on pseudonyms, for example, and the names that are popular, you know, but that may not be the exact name in the ballot paper. And therefore, it will take longer for their supporters to run through.
A lot of people will be looking for Sonko.
Of course.
Probably will be no Sonko.
I mean, it's most probable that there will be no Sonko in the ballot paper. And therefore, a lot of people may even say, come on, our candidate is not there.
Dropped out of the race.
And feel frustrated, you know, and just leave. But I think that moving forward, the message to Kenyans is that this is not like any other we've had before. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. They have to be patient. I think that is the most important thing. Patience. Be patient as Kenyans. Take your time. I think voting is a political right.
Yes,
you need to do it right.
So it doesn't matter, because I know in our preface before we started, we talked about time also, the time limit.
Yes.
You're saying it was what, 20 minutes to a person?
We are seeing that the lowest we are seeing 8 minutes, you know. But you see also in terms of the configuration of the polling stations, you know, in terms of numbers, we are dealing with not more than 800, you know, in polling stations. That is still huge, given that every individual voter will do at least 6, you know, in the process. So that takes time, you know, if you have a polling station where the numbers reach the maximum in terms of what is allocated there. Therefore, it means that we really have to be vigilant as Kenyans. But we also need to ask the officials, particularly, to be extremely helpful.
Yes.
Because you cast your vote wrongly, you know, that is a vote wasted.
And was that there? Did you see if you've got issues pertaining to even the clerks themselves being a little confused, how would they be able then to help the citizenry? And that, of course, also takes longer. So,
yes, I mean, this is the reason. This is the reason why we have to go, as IEBC has to go to reflect, go back to the drawing board and see where it is necessary to retrain, you know, and also revisit some of the issues, particularly the technical issues that are emerging around this. Confusion is something which ought not to be there, because we need to have put in place quality training, you know, training that ensures that the clerks and the officials are well versed with the process and procedures. You know, if need be, you know, they can ask experts like ourselves to help support some of these to correct them. But I know they have the capacity as the IEBC to reflect within this 1 week and ensure that we have things running smoothly and, most importantly, efficiently. Because elections is not just how well you administer it. Efficiency is also this. You know, you cannot, for example, vote for 4 days. You must know that at some point this thing must come to an end, counting must happen, so you must ensure that efficiency is also the rule of the game, and that is what we are urging them. If it requires anything over and above what they can offer, there is skills outside here which can support that.
There was an issue about the law. Certain people went to court after the nominations and said certain names be included or certain names be removed because of the High Court rulings on court judgments. And there were possibilities that either the Electoral Commission disobeys the court orders, or they remove or they include. What is the issue?
Well, I think this is still murky.
It is very murky. Yes.
Yeah, it's still quite murky, and we need some clarity from the Electoral Management Body, you know, in order to just clarify these things moving forward, because we don't want confusion. You know, you recall the problem was that time for the nomination process was too short. And then this was just left for political parties themselves, you know, and they all did all manner of things. And the end result was completely shambolic nomination process, you know. Yes, shambolic, so to speak, because there was nothing to speak to and write home about in terms of political parties helping this country to grow democracy. That is what we expected out of them, as a requirement out of the letter and spirit of the Constitution. You remember, the Constitution, you know, does set quite high standards and principles for political parties to help us grow. And one thing about it is that you see a shambolic nomination process during the party nominations. This is likely to translate into chaos come the real elections. And that is not what we want for this country. Two, is that the arbitration adjudication processes that were put in place were, in my view, totally inadequate and did not have sufficient time, you know, to enable parties to fully ventilate. Excuse me. And that, in my view, created a shortcut, because we even saw the tribunal, the committee that was set up by the IEBC itself, you know, trying to ventilate over 200 cases in a week or two. I mean, you can't tell me you will get some sense of justice out of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we moved on as a country, that is all. But we moved on with chaos and complete shambles. And you know, as we get to the elections, we cannot get that. And that is the reason why it's confusing. And we still had a situation where even after the close of the nominations, changes in the lists of people being nominated. And most importantly, the party list, you know, which has not been made public to date, you know, is something that is of critical concern. And you heard that parties were then putting in their cronies and friends and all manner of people.
I thought the list was
have you seen it in your papers, for example?
Nominations of people who were supposed to get into Senate and to the national.
Yeah, the people who
through
were
the party
nominated
list.
after the elections, the party list.
Oh,
Yes.
I see.
You know,
I
that
was
is
public. I mean, there were people like, for example, Margaret Wanjiru, who doesn't really need to run for Senate because she's been nominated anyway.
This is something that you hear in certain quarters, that so and
not
so
published.
is, and it is in that list. But you've never seen it in the newspapers, for example. The media has never been given this. We observers have never accessed this, so we don't know what it is. To the extent that, as far as we are concerned, we don't know.
There's no
We don't
party.
have that information.
Just-
but it should be public
There
information.
was, I think, this weekend, Africa, the Center for Governance,
Yes.
Africa Center for Governance, which is run by Otieno.
Yes.
They have gone to court. I saw a suit they have filed suing the individuals and the political parties and even the electoral commission of those people who were nominated after. And
The
all this,
deadline.
they are listed.
Yes.
For those people who hopped, party hopping,
Party hopping.
those people who hopped after. Now, what's the significance of that? Because the
I
thing is,
think,
is it not closing the gate after the
the significance of that is that, you know, as a country, we must be guided by the rule of law.
Yeah.
This is it. You know, this is a political process. It is an electoral process that is going to give us leadership. If we cannot have a process that is within the confines of the rule of law, then we are messing up, because then we are creating a leadership that has emerged out of a shambolic process that negates the
But hasn't
principle of
that
the
been
rule of
overtaken
law.
by event?
No, it has not been overtaken.
Because there are
by-
going to be elections on the 4th.
One of the things that one looks at is that
Yes.
we would like to see a situation where we are able to say to ourselves that even if this thing has gone by, the rules were breached, then in future we get things correct, because we must be able to generate precedent. But if we live by chaotic precedent where things go wrong and we say that, okay, things have gone wrong, but we can live with them, you know, an election for certain actors is a life and death situation. You cannot say, for example, if candidate A kills candidate B in this process, then you say it is wrong, but we can live by it. No, that is not it. And that is why I think that it is important that we ventilate some of these things in the court, so that we are able to then generate guiding precedent and principles that in future can get us to a better elections. That is what we need. We need elections that are guided by the law, elections that happen within the law, elections that comply with the rules of the game, because without that, you cannot even, to begin with, say there should be an electoral commission, because they are founded within the law and they work within the law. So if they go against the law and you say, for example, that, okay, we just move on, life would be so nasty.
Just reading some of your comments on 2442, but they keep them coming in on 2442. Agra Kitui from Kisui, thank you. Kisui says, let us give credit where it's due. The media is too harsh on the IEBC. I've lost it. Media is too harsh on IEBC, so I'm so confident with it, and so far I believe they deserve a praise. So far, so good. Nothing can be 100%. However, somebody's asking, so I want to find out what will happen during the vote casting. Will IEBC be able to push forward the hours of the elections if these mistakes that you're talking about occur?
Yes, of course.
If it takes 20 minutes or 30 minutes for one person to vote?
Yes, of course. I think that will be a determination that will be made on that particular day and at the appropriate time. You know, but I think the ideal is to prepare Kenyans that this thing might take longer than what we are usually used to. You know, if, for example, by 6 p.m. in the evening, you know, when these things are closing, yeah, it's 5 p.m.
Yes.
in the evening, you still have 1,000 people on the line.
You have to.
You
allow
have
them.
to process them, you know. And if there is a problem that forces an interruption to happen in the process during the day, you must be able to extend by a similar measure of hours or time lost. So, in a sense, it is real that this thing will go beyond the time limit for the day, and Kenyans need to be prepared for that. There are areas where this thing may, because of the time to be taken and also the problems with the voting process itself, it may take longer. But also remember, counting is also there.
Yes.
Yeah. So as soon as this thing stops, 30
Counting
minutes
begins.
thereafter, counting begins. But that is still not very clear to everybody how this will happen, you know. And these are the things we need to be able to understand and appreciate, so that we prepare ourselves. What order will counting take, for example? You know, these are things which ought to be clear by now. And how this will be processed one after the other. You recall you have 6 positions for this, so you will have to finish one by one as you move on. So we have a situation.
What is stipulated? Well, how are they supposed to handle it? Haphazardly, or?
I think they will start with the president.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so it's pretty clear. That's the president,
well,
the governor.
you know, I mean, these are things that we need to come out and say ourselves, because the fear normally is you start with the president, and it doesn't go well with people around there, you know. And
what do you mean go well?
It probably they don't like the winner, or who is announced as the winner. You know, that may generate tension, and people
Wait,
might
I don't get it. I mean, if they start the president, then but they are dispute mechanisms.
Yes, there are
there's a process
dispute
that
mechanisms.
happen. It's not as bad as 2007 when people start guessing.
That's it. But the point is that we need to have a sense in which we are not, you know, creating a situation where tension can arise out of the counting process. You know, take for example, there are people who will only be interested in the presidential counts,
Yes,
and may not be interested in any other things.
Yes.
There are people who will only be keen on the gubernatorial governor's
Yes.
process and nothing else. There are those who will be looking for the senator seats. So you see, anxiety around this will build. There's no doubt about that. In as much as we will tell citizens that, look, once you cast your vote, keep
Wait.
away from the polling station and wait. You know how human beings behave, right? Yeah, and that is a fear. However much security you have around there, you know, managing anxiety is something that we must now prepare ourselves very well to handle. That is the point I'm making here. That you do it in such a way that excites anxiety and creates tension. And then you create an environment where this process may be interfered with. You know, so we have to be very careful how we approach this. You also remember that we are also dealing with a situation here where you must also be very particular on the voting process, because there are people who will only want, for some reason, to vote for the president and disappear, and nobody else.
Okay, I'm a little confused. My question is this: are you saying you're foreseeing a situation where the anxiety is not managed, and if it is not, who are you saying you're blaming that on? IABC?
No, this is our responsibility as Kenyans. There is a manager in the process. We also have security personnel around this, but we also have all other stakeholders, including political parties and candidates.
Exactly.
Right. And the responsibility is for all of us to prepare ourselves to manage our expectations on the day.
Not specifically IBC, because they have a lot of work to do, and we should not be able...
Not specifically IEBC, but all of us.
That's what I
with the leadership of the IEBC, that we manage expectations well on that day. You remember, tension is about expectations. It's about anxiety. You know, if this is not managed well, it may, the potential that it can degenerate is something we also
Have you seen that in the
ourselves.
process? Have you seen like there may be a situation like that where they're unable to manage the process properly?
For example, no, because they were just beginning to do the mock exercise yesterday. So that is really the process where we see them coming in to manage this, you know, and that you saw was also mad with low voter turnout. So you didn't have large numbers to deal with, you know. On elections day, you might be overwhelmed by numbers.
Let's go to a different subject.
I think they'll do a good job.
Let's go to a different subject about the alleged claims of rigging. Or some people accusing the government, although they are also in the government, of rigging or offices of the president. And of course, the other issue which we were debating this morning with Jimmy here about voter, identity card sales. What as an election observation group, what you do say about the claims about the rigging or campaigns or using government vehicles, and also about, is it reasonable for anybody to sell their card ID?
No, I think that is well, people do that. They
sell IDs?
They do that.
Then how do they go to
And then how did they go about that?
They do that. It's the most unfortunate thing. Very funny things happen during elections. You know, people
it is easy to sell a voter card.
People get money. People, you know, it's just like the Shylock thing where you put your ID there, you get money. So that you don't vote on that day, later you go get it. You know this kind of things. Others sell it completely because they know they'll get a police
Sherlock's don't really take your ID,
and get some of them ask you, you know,
to give your IDs. Really?
Yeah, you give your ID, you
it's
give
criminal.
Many things.
That's criminal. They're not the
this
copies.
Is Kenyan society, you know.
I want to know if these ones will leave your
What about the other rigging claims by court?
You know, claims of rigging coming at this time, you know, those are most unfortunate claims. For us as observers, we are very keenly watching through the process, and we want to assure all the actors in this, the candidates, that we have sufficient tools that will be able to detect some of these and enable us to speak to some of these, you know, and therefore, if there is sufficient evidence that rigging is taking place, I think there are sufficient avenues through which to channel this, not just blurt it out in the public, because that causes panic.
Absolutely.
We don't want to approach an election with panic and tension. If there are genuine reasons for one to believe that rigging is taking place, that information should be taken to the right channel.
A person like Anyang' Nyong'o,
yes,
who is a minister in this government, he wrote an article yesterday in the newspaper, in the Sunday Nation, making those allegations.
I think he should be put to task. That's the thing, so that he can be
there's a minister saying those things.
Yeah.
Saying, for instance, the security of the ballot paper. He was questioning whether actually the ballot paper, the material will be in secure hands. If you start asking questions
as a minister in government,
what are we supposed to do?
The first thing that we ought to do is to be able to have confidence in the IEBC.
That article actually was casting aspersions on the ability.
But it is most unfortunate. As observers, we can assure them, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o and the others, that we have watched this process very closely, how IEBC so far has managed it, and overall we have confidence in the IEBC that it has the capacity to deliver for us if we all behave well. That's the thing. We all have a role. We must make our contribution. And remember, we already have the ballot papers in the country. And nobody has told us we don't have. It's a security place which is sealed to enable us get to elections with things of integrity.
Absolutely.
And as observers, we can assure you that so far we are happy with the security of the critical materials for elections, because we have no reason and haven't seen any reason that they are being tampered with, you know. And that is it. We must be able to approach these elections with utmost faith and confidence in the electoral management body, the IEBC, that they have put sufficient processes in place, they have put sufficient security measures in place, particularly in relation to the critical election materials like the ballot papers.
And Anyang' Nyong'o was saying that the problem may not be with the Electoral Commission, IEBC, it will be people outside.
Yes, but this is within the custody.
that is what we're talking about.
This is
casting aspersions about security.
This is within the custody of the IEBC. Yeah. Talk about election materials. The police, for example, are not keeping them. For purposes of these elections, the police are going to be officials of the IEBC, to be controlled by the IEBC. And this is part of legislation that we all supported to develop, because we know the problems with command chains in the police force, for example. But we also have a new police service, you know, commission. We should be able to trust that moving forward, everybody has, you know, good faith in all these processes. Because once we begin to cast aspersions now, we will continue to do that. And on the 5th or 6th or 7th, when we are being told about the results, regardless of whether they are legitimate or not, we will have said, we will refer back to what we said, and then just dismiss the entire process. That is not good for this country. That is not good for Kenyans. We must be able, as Kenyans together, demonstrate some united faith, as we saw yesterday during the prayer meeting.
Yes, yes, that was
people
powerful.
Coming together to begin to tell us that they have faith in the process, and if the process is well managed and well conducted, they will accept the outcome, because they have no reason to cast aspersions. We must be able to demonstrate that, particularly from the political leadership that we have, because we know the kind of influence that they have on citizens. Once they begin to say that, citizens will follow blindly, and that is chaos. People will go to the polling stations, or others will decide not to go to the polling stations because they've been told that the process has been messed up front. We don't need to do that.
So as you end
it's
up,
unfortunate.
right? Exactly.
Really, really unfortunate.
Keep saying it's especially minister and government.
Absolutely.
You're part of that government.
Exactly.
So as you wind up, what sort of strong message? Because everyone is saying, after the prayer meeting, people are very confident. People are saying they're very confident in terms of IEBC. And somebody is saying here we should not listen to what members of government are saying. I agree with Mutegi. This is just a sign of somebody who's scared of what will happen. People, will say all sorts of things. But you've been an observer. You've checked and the systems to see whether we're prepared. So we've talked about the negatives, which obviously must be discussed. But what are the positives, and what should Kenya be looking forward to in as far as an election that's been handled very well come 4th March?
I think to begin with, there is a sense of enthusiasm that is emerging out of Kenyans, and a sense of optimism.
Yes.
For me, I would like Kenyans to build on that for the remainder of the 7 days that we see now. That optimism, that, as one politician says, that, the bridge will be crossed. Not the bridge for that political party, but the bridge for this nation called Kenya will be crossed in unity, in peace and harmony, and with dignity. That we will, as Kenyans, cross that bridge and deliver ourselves and say hallelujah when we get there. That is the kind of optimism that I would like to see Kenyans moving forward with, especially in this last week, the last lap.
Yes. I think you'd better have a chat with
together. Move together.
That was very negative.
And we want to tell Kenyans that, the observation platform, we have international observers here, but we also have a solid, credible domestic observation platform known as the Election Observation Group. And this time round, we are going to also utilize technology, and new methodology in election observation, and we'll be able to systematically assess the process, the quality of that process, from opening to counting, and we'll also analyze the results that are provisionally given out there, and on the basis of that we will do a projection of the results, so that this thing we can tell you in real time on 5th or 6th. In fact, on 5th, if all ends on 4th. But if all ends on 5th, on 6th we will tell you with a degree of accuracy and certainty that the outcome is like this. So that we are helping Kenyans to protect the integrity of the process and the outcome. And we want Kenyans to give us that opportunity, but we also want Kenyans ultimately to give the IEBC the opportunity to demonstrate that this is their institution and has the national interest at hand.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I think most importantly is that after the elections, Kenya must remain Kenya and life must continue. There are dispute mechanism institutions that will sort things out. As Cousin Barry said, let's not take our issues to the streets, let's take them to the courts, because we must continue as a country. Thank you, Peter, for being here. We are live. Stay with us.